What might surprise you is that there are Nazi laws today that still impact the lives of millions of people inside Germany. Even 80 years on since the fall of the Third Reich, the legacy of the Nazis affects people today, and in the rules and laws of Germany, there are some very strange examples of this. Let's get into it and look at these. With the laws that were repealed and written out of German law by the Allied courts at the end of World War II, there were lots which were actually left in place. The Allies sought to denazify the state and to rid the lands under their control of Nazi influence. So symbols such as the swastika became banned and not used, and anything focusing on persecution was gotten rid of. Over the years, Germany has reformed many Nazi-era laws. For example, in 1994, they repealed the law criminalising men having physical relations with each other, and recently they also scrapped a ban on medical practitioners advertising that they carry out terminations on pregnant women. One statute that still survives and impacts the lives of some each year in Germany relates to the law around the crime of murder. The law from 1941 claims that women who kill their abusive husbands are more likely to be locked up for murder than husbands who beat their wives to death. The Nazis believed that a murderer was someone who had killed treacherously or sneakily, using a special word for it, and that law is still in use today. This Nazi law means that a man who beats his wife over many years and kills her is less likely to be convicted of murder, being given a mandatory life sentence, and is more likely to be sentenced to manslaughter and would spend 5 years in prison. The Nazis defined murder in their law with the mentality that some people are weak-minded, and they defined a murderer as someone who was treacherous, and they did not have in law something that forced judges to evaluate the circumstances of each crime. East Germany had a different set of laws closer to the British laws on murder, but the Nazi laws still favour the strong who murder the weak, and this is still used today. This law has brought a huge amount of controversy, and in Germany was even applied in 1981 to a lady named Marianne Bachmeier. She shot her daughter's alleged killer as he was on trial in a courtroom, and she claimed that hopefully he's dead. The German legal system using the outdated Nazi law stated that this could not have been manslaughter due to the trauma caused by Marianne Bachmeier's daughter's ordeal. They claimed it had to be murder, as the victim did not expect the attack, deeming that it was a sneaky crime. Another time this was applied was in 2001, when a man named Armin Moyes placed an advertisement on a website for a well-built 18 to 30-year-old to be slaughtered and then consumed. One man signed up to this, and Moyes carried out the threat and then cooked his victim. Now, in the mind of anyone in other countries, this killer was quite clearly guilty of murder and terrible crimes, but using the Nazi laws that still existed, as his victim had consented to death, the law stated it was not murder and that there was no treachery or sneak about the killing, and this meant that the man served 9 years in prison. Many of the laws introduced during the Third Reich were brought in by Nazi Interior Minister Wilhelm Frick. From January 1939, the law forced Jewish people to add the names Sarah or Israel to their first names if they didn't have a name which was said to have been typically Jewish. This law led to a huge amount of exclusion inside of Germany, and the Allies did scrap this part of the law after World War II. However, the text was incorporated into federal laws in 1954. The remaining part of the law was written allegedly as if the Third Reich still existed, and in the law words such as German Reich, Reich government, and Reich Interior Minister are all used, all Nazi terms. The Reich had failed to exist since 1945, but these words are still existing in legal texts. One lawyer estimates that there are possibly as many as 40 laws which have wording like this, and these laws were created and crafted in the Nazi period and were then placed into power. There are calls to clean up the law, so it is completely denazified, even in its language. Another rule that was introduced by the Nazis was written in April 1933, shortly after they came into power, and they declared May the 1st each year the Day of National Work, and this became an official state holiday. This was one way to win over the people, give them a day off. They announced that all celebrations were going to be organised by the government, and each May 1st there would be a day off work for everyone, and huge Nazi rallies took place. Many other countries later followed suit, and today it's known inside of many lands as International Workers' Day. The Nazis borrowed the idea from other countries such as Spain, but still today May Day or Labour Day, as it is known, is celebrated in Germany, and many demonstrations take place inside of the country on that day, and often there was even rioting in some districts, some of it linked to political unrest. The government even had to consider more pleasing efforts to quell rioting, introducing more friendly street fairs, and this has worked, but some neo-Nazi groups use this day, which was written into law during the Third Reich, as a bank holiday to hold demonstrations, many which erupt into violence. So every May 1st, the Nazis granted people a state holiday, and this is still the case today. But I'm sure most people won't be thanking them when they don't have to go into work. There are also elements of the German tax system, especially relating to marriage, that are in place since then. The Nazis themselves were very much pro-marriage, especially for those who were Aryan, and they wanted people to have as many children as possible for the Reich. The Nazis would introduce even grants and allowances to help couples out, and the tax system in Germany still contains some thread of Nazi economics. The tax system in Germany allows income splitting, transferring income from one spouse to another to then assess personal tax. For example, if a husband earns €50,000 a year and a wife earns €20,000 a year, then they can combine their income and then halve this, and they were then liable to pay tax on income based on €35,000 each. The Nazis did not want women working, seeing their place is in the home, especially after having children, and the tax system today still does not make sense for women to go back to work after having children. The Reichskonkordat was an agreement signed between the Nazis and the Vatican, and this treaty guaranteed the rights of the Catholic Church in Germany, but it also allowed the Nazis to collect church taxes. Those who were part of a registered church in different German states have to pay a tax to the German state. The Nazis introduced this as a way of collecting money from people who were part of organisations that they themselves were not keen on. So each year, people have to pay a percentage of their income tax if they are a member of a church. If someone was baptised, then they had to pay this too. People can revoke their religious status and they will then not need to pay the tax. Now at the end of the war, the Allies tried to repeal the Reichskonkordat, and they thought it was not a fair agreement, but the Vatican refused to allow this, and today this agreement between the German Reich and the Holy See does still exist, despite the fact the Reich does not. Now one of the final laws that exist, still from the time of the Nazis, relates to animals and animal protection. Hitler himself loved animals, in particular his Alsatian dogs. Introduced was the Animal Protection Act, passed almost immediately after the Nazis came to power, and it was passed on the 21st of April 1933. This law concerned the slaughter of animals and said they should not be slaughtered without anaesthetic. Further laws involving animal welfare were introduced, and Hermann Göring, the later Reichsmarshal, spearheaded much of this. He claimed in an announcement on radio that an absolute and permanent ban on vivisection is not only a necessary law to protect animals and to show sympathy with their pain, but it is also a law for humanity itself. I therefore announce the immediate stopping of vivisection and have made the practice a punishable offence in Prussia. Until such time as punishment is pronounced, the culprit shall be lodged in a concentration camp. Göring himself, strangely despite being an animal rights advocate, was an ardent hunter and also a huge hypocrite. The Nazi state was the first in the world to also place wolves under protection, and further decrees involving animals were enacted over the years, and many of these are still in law today. So there are still today many laws and rules which were created in Nazi Germany and were signed off by Adolf Hitler that are still either in power or have some semblance of Nazi ideology in them that are still used and applied in German law today. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.